Now, here's the writing paper. And these are your simple basic strokes that you're going to start with. Now, I told you you're supposed to use a pencil, and you are. But my video doesn't pick up pencil very good, so I have a pen. So forgive that. But number 2 pencils really are the best when you're teaching writing. And this is really the correct hold that you want to hold. This one goes on top. This one, the middle finger right here, it rests, the pencil rests right on top of it. And this one. So these two are they're almost touching on either side. Do you see that? So that's how we write. Now, sometimes kids will have a really hard time and they'll do this, or they may want to do this. There's all sorts of different grasps, and there's different reasons why it's difficult to hold a pencil that way. I suggest getting the pencil graspers because those do help. And I also have a video coming out that may show for kids that have trouble with fine motor skills. There's some things that you can do to strengthen that as well. But that I'll do in a different video. So here's the correct pencil grasp. Now I'm going to use my pen. These are the basic strokes. So in every letter of the alphabet, one of these strokes is used. So if they can practice these strokes first, then they can write any letter in the alphabet. So I actually let my kids come up with their own names. So some of them called this the daddy line and the baby line. And this was the underdog because it started in the middle and it went under that pink line here. I don't remember what they called this one, but I let them come up with their own names for these ones. This was the baby and this was the daddy, and I forget what they called them. But this one I called my 2 o'clock O. And for a long time, I made the 2 o'clock dot for them. And I'm going to show you how to do that. Because this letter here, there's a lot of letters in the alphabet that start with an O. And I need to start it in the same place every time. Now, I'm going to show you why this is important. So there's a lot of kiddos that when they start writing, they do things like this. Now, if you're writing like this, you're doing a lot of extra strokes that are not necessary to writing. One thing, it takes a whole lot longer to do. Secondly, it's very ineffective and it's harder on the hand. So the strokes that I'm going to show you, that I just showed you right here, that go for every letter of the alphabet, they're the easiest on the hand. They're the most efficient. So just doing this is much simpler than doing this and then coming back and putting that in there. I cannot tell you how many kids I see do this, and then when you give them a paper to write, or they have to, oh, I hate writing. Well, I would hate writing too if I had to write like this, backwards all the time. And then when they do this, they form their letters different every time. Well, that's a lot of stress, and that's a lot of work to remember how to do things when it's done differently every time. And it's a lot of stress on the hand. So if you teach them how to do it right from the beginning, then it's going to go a lot easier for them. So I want to talk about this 2 o'clock O. Now, you know what? Kindergartners have no concept of time. They're not learning 2 o'clock yet at the beginning of the school year. I'm going to give you that. However, I still call it 2 o'clock O, and I do for like 2 or 3 years after, depending on the kid. Some kids, for the whole year at least. Okay. So, but I always say 2 o'clock because on a clock, and I pull the clock down. Let me grab a clock here. I pull my clock down and I show it to them. And I say, all right, you see this 2 o'clock where the light is on? Right here. So we're going to start here every time. And when we start there, we're going to make our A. So we start there just like that. And my pen actually fits in there. So if you have one like that, that's great. This is like a great tool for them to use to start with. So I say, all right, give me a 2 o'clock O. And they put their little pencil right at 2 o'clock and they go around. And we might do that several times and they get to roll the dice and they get to go on their little game board. Awesome. All right. So when we're done with that and they understand we're starting at 2 o'clock every time, even though they may never be able to tell 2 o'clock for the, another good part of the year, that's okay. When I say 2 o'clock, I put the dot for them and I say, all right, now give me 2 o'clock O's. So I actually do it with them and I say up to the middle line and all the way down to the bottom and back to where we start. All right, good job. Now, I'm going to tell you this one right here. It's the last in the row because it's the hardest to make. So first you start with these ones. And then these ones. These ones are a little bit harder because they're crooked. And you're going to see kiddos. I'm going to grab my other piece of paper here because I don't want to ruin this one. You're going to see kiddos when they first start out, they go like this. No concept of where to start. So sometimes I make that little dot for them. So from one dot to the next. You see that? And so I'll do that for them for a while. Or when I'm doing the small one, I'll put the dots for them. And I'll say, all right, give me 2 small ones. And they do. Dot to dot. And do that as long as they need. And then try it. Okay, so see if you could do it without the dots. Let's try those dots again. You see that? You don't make them feel bad. You don't say anything bad. Yeah, those dots are so helpful, aren't they? Let's use our helpers. And that's how you frame it. You frame it in a way that is building, encouraging, not failure. So that's how I do these lines. And I do the same with this one. If I have kiddos having trouble, but it's a little bit easier on this middle line because they're starting right there at that middle line, and we go down. And we do that, and I might say, okay, give me 4 of those. They do it, and if they look nice, whoo, roll the dice. If for some reason, and I'm going to use my little pencil here, rusty, trusty pencil. If for some reason, when they do this 2 o'clock O, they go like this, I don't say, well, that's a good try. No, I don't. I say, you know what? You are trying hard. Let's go ahead and fix this, dude. And depending on the kiddo, some like to erase it on by themselves, and some need some help. Honestly, do what your kid needs, because the goal right now is practice handwriting, not practice erasing. And I've had both. Some of mine wanted to do all the erasing themselves, and some of them wanted help. So with this, when they have trouble in the beginning, I make those dots for them. I'm going to do it with my pen so you can see it better. See these dots? That's a lot easier to follow. And honestly, you could do this several for days. Just every time you want them to do, and obviously don't just do O's. I say, okay, give me 3 of these, or whatever they call them. I let them choose. And then they get to roll, and then we do several. And when we get to the O's, okay, give me some of these. But if they're having trouble, I make it for them and say, all right, here's your 2 o'clock O. And I've made 3 of them. All right, go ahead, go for it. And they trace them. 1. And you know what? Sometimes they go way above. So we erase it and we help and we fix it. But they do their best to stay on those lines. Okay? And that's how we encourage good handwriting. Now this right here, this line, I call this the middle line. So when they start here, I say go up as they're doing it. I say it with them. Or I say it, and sometimes they start repeating it with me after a time. But the goal is repetition, right? The more they hear it, the more they make those pathways in the brain, the more they remember it. So we start at 2 o'clock, and as they're writing, we say go up to the middle line, touch it. Ooh, we touched it. Now come down all the way to the bottom, touch it. Now go back home. I cannot tell you how many times. I swear to God, I'm a broken record. I've done it with all 5 kids, and I've done it for like months on end when they're first starting. But when you do this, the repetition of them not just doing it, but you saying it, they hear it. That's different methods of input so that they remember, I go up, I touch this line, I come down, I touch this line, I go back home. If they can do this one, the 2 o'clock O, then they can do A. They can do D. They can do G. And the list goes on. And I'm going to show you all the ones that are line letters and all the ones that are 2 o'clock letters. Now, I cannot stress enough that if you do this the right way, if you have them focus on detail, so that if they go, when they make their 2 o'clock G and they go below the line and you say, oops, let's fix that. They don't need to erase the whole thing. They can just erase right there. All right, let's try that one again. Okay, good. All right, go back home. They go back home to the dot. All right, now go down and touch the bottom. They touch the bottom. Whoo, make a little hook. I verbalize as I go, and I do it day in and day out. Oh, that is such a nice G. Go ahead and roll. They roll the dice, and they do their game. When they do this, there's a sense of accomplishment, and there's what do you call that? Attention to detail. You're training them right from the very beginning to pay attention to detail, not to slop over so that later on you're going to have to redo a bad habit. It's like a trail in the woods, okay? If you told a kid to start out right here and they have to go through the trail in the woods, they might go this way and they might go this way the next time. And every time they go to grandma's house, they go a different path. Well, they're never going to really make a trail in the woods that way, are they? However, if you stay here and you have little markers along the path for them to go, then as they go along that path and they go through the markers to grandma's house, they make a trail through the woods. Every time they walk it, that trail, the grass gets stomped down a little bit more and a little bit more. And eventually you have a nice walking path and they won't need these markers anymore because they have a nice trail to go through. And the same is true with our handwriting. Right now, these right here, these lines are our markers that show us where to go up, all the way down. Don't go past the markers. And if you follow this trail enough, eventually, when you get lined, the college rule paper that doesn't have all of this fancy top and bottom lines, they'll be able to, just like this path, you've made a pathway in their brain that tells them exactly what to do and how to make it. They'll be able to do it with all of these lines and markers.